that have served our city well. Former Vice Mayor George Cate is with us. Thank you. And also former Councilman Jim Forcum, who sits on the commission. On our panel, we have Mr. Tim Walker, and I will let him introduce the other panelists that are with him. But before we start your presentation, Mr. Walker, are you satisfied with the mayor's proposal for your department?
We're happy. We did not get any cuts, and I can explain a little bit more of that with my presentation.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Go right ahead.
Well, thank you, Councilman and Chair Matthews. I appreciate this opportunity. I want to introduce our administrative assistant, Yvonne Ogren. She's on my left, and to my right is the chair of the Metro Historical Commission, Dr. Bill McKee, and the vice chair, Mr. Forcum, Jim Forcum. And in the gallery, there are members of both the Metro Historical Commission and Metro Historic Zoning Commission, and they are Lynn McDonald, Lula Brooks, Don Cusick, Holly Connor, Bob Allen, Rose Cantrell, Ann Nilsson, Linda Wynn, Ben Mosley, and Vice Mayor George Cate. I'd also like to recognize the board members of the NCCA, the Nashville City Cemetery Association, that are here, and the Davidson County historian, Dr. Carol Busey. Our department's had a number of really proud accomplishments over the past year, and I just wanted to highlight a few. We sponsored our second annual Old House Fair and co-sponsored the 32nd annual African American History and Culture Conference with Tennessee State University, both of which had record-breaking attendances this year. We also had our 38th annual Preservation Awards program last night. We've approved and installed 5 new historic markers this year and supported and approved 2 nominations to the National Register of Historic Places. We've sponsored or co-sponsored more than 24 history programs and tours throughout the year, and we partnered with the Davidson County historian, Dr. Carol Busey, to sponsor local classes on Nashville history, which are titled Know Nashville, and that is KNOW, Nashville. We've also completed a new brochure in which we've partnered with several nonprofits and institutions that tells Nashville's Civil War stories through the eyes of those who lived here during the war. And jointly with Metro Parks, we've begun working with a firm to complete a historic structures report for Fort Negley. We're in the final throes of forming a friends group for the fort, and we're beginning the interpretive plan and reconstruction of Fort Nashborough. We continue to work with Metro agencies to evaluate and protect our county's historic resources, most visibly through the Metro Planning Commission's 2040 General Plan Update, in which we authored a background paper through MDHA's, the Metro Development Housing Agency's Redevelopment District Design Review process, and through capital improvement projects with Metro Parks, General Services, Public Works, and Metro Schools. We also continue to partner with local nonprofits to promote tourism in our city's rich history, architecture, and culture by co-sponsoring events such as the Nashville City Cemetery's Living History Tour, their Memorial Day Dash, which just recently took place, their monthly history walks, through the Tennessee Historical Society State History Day in conjunction with Metro Schools, through fall festivals at Nashville Zoo's Grassmere, the APTA's Buchanan Log House, and historic Germantown's Oktoberfest, and through events at Two Rivers Mansion and at Fort Negley with their prospective friends groups. Just want to mention, last month we began a free monthly Civil War lecture series, which rotates to a different Civil War era site each month, and our next lecture will be given by Dr. Bobby Lovett on African American life during the war, and that will take place on Tuesday, June 18th at the Clover Bottom Mansion on Lebanon Pike at 4:30, so I hope you'll attend that. Moving on to the budget. In the coming year, our department faces several challenges due to the lack of funding and staff. Not only as we continue to plan history-related events and educational program, but also as property owners seek to expand historic zoning to new areas. Over the past 5 years, we have lost a staff position, while our workload has significantly increased, not only due to the work and expanded offerings of the Metro Historical Commission, but also due to the popularity of the Metro Historic Zoning Commission's local historic zoning, a tool that manages growth while protecting the city's architectural character. Over the past 5 years, the programming offered by the Metro Historical Commission has tripled, and during this time, the number of properties reviewed by the Metro Historic Zoning Commission has increased by over 50%, with the designation of now 9 new districts, with Salem Town being designated just a couple of weeks ago, and the expansion of 2 districts. In addition, the number of projects reviewed and permitted has increased by over 80%. Although we continue to look for ways to make our process more efficient, the turnaround for review of permitted work is being impacted by this increased workload. In closing, as always, we continue to look for ways to reduce cost and work more effectively while providing quality service to residents as we work to preserve our history, our neighborhoods, and our significant places. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Council Lady Moore.
Thank you, Chair, and it's good to see everybody. Dr. McKee, I see you monthly when I can attend the meeting, so I appreciate all that you do. Tim, I'm coming from out of the budget book, page D64, and you talked about your strategic issues. Could you just explain to the viewing audience and substantiate, why would you need another worker for us, please?
Well, twofold. The Historical Commission and Dr. McKee or Vice Chair Forkham may want to weigh in, but we've been doing a lot of expanded programming. You might have noticed that. This Civil War lecture series, the sesquicentennial, the Civil War, which we've been very involved in, have gotten additional funding for, with Metro at 50, which we were very involved in, and helped create the panels that were up at the tent for the end celebration with the Davidson County historian. Again, we're doing a lot more programming. We're reaching out both with the Nashville City Cemetery Association that actually meets in our office twice a month with their monthly meetings and committee meetings, and with other Friends groups. We helped to start Friends of Two Rivers Mansion. We're ex officio on that board and very involved at that site. And we're just about ready to get 501c3 status for Friends of Fort Negley. And again, we're very involved in that site. So the Historical Commission continues to be very involved. As you also know, since I've been director, we've updated 6 of our brochures, and we've produced 2 new brochures. So we're also working with the Convention and Visitors Bureau to promote our city, its architecture, and its history. It's part of a quality of life issue. And then, of course, historic zoning continues to be very busy because of the increased workload with historic zoning. Just 2 months ago, we ended up backing up the deadline for submissions. It was a 2-week submission deadline for an application prior to a commission meeting. We've had to back that up 2 days just to turn them around and get comments back to applicants in time. And we're really just to a breaking point, I think, with staffing because of that. That's one way we've dealt with it. And again, not only all of these new districts that have been added, but I have 5 different council people either wanting to expand districts and 1 council person wanting to create a new neighborhood conservation overlay district. So,
Well, thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Council Lady Moore. Council Lady Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Tim, for being here. I'm one of those council members that's hoping that I'll be able to move forward with requests from my neighbors to expand our conservation zoning overlay. And I think there may be some citizens who are in support just of conservation zoning in general. Is it legal to ask for a show of hands for the people who weren't acknowledged, just neighbors that are here to support conservation zoning? Thank you all so much for coming. I mean, you've clearly demonstrated that not only is it important to the people who live in the conservation zoning districts and the historic districts, but also to all of Nashville and to all of our tourists, which is a huge part of Nashville. What would it take to fund that position? What needs to be added to the budget to make that happen?
For a full position, it would be $63,700 with benefits.
Okay.
Included.
Mr. Chair, if I might, I would like to add that to our wish list, if I could, $63,700 for funding a position for another staff member for historic.
Mr. Cooper, were you able to note that?
Thank you so much.
It's been added, Council Lady. You're welcome. Let's see. see, Councilman Stein.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on Councilwoman Allen's question and her show of hands. If this position's not funding, none of the conservation overlay work will take place?
Well, that's a decision we'll have to make.
Okay, so you're saying that potentially all of that work may not take place with your current staff?
Well, no, we may not expand districts. We're getting to a breaking point. We've already backed up the deadline, try to turn around projects fast enough, and we can't keep adding properties. Again, we've increased actually by 55% the number of thousands of properties have been added in the last 5 years, and we've lost 2 half positions. So we're doing as best we can do, and we'll continue to do that. But it makes it difficult to continue to take on more and more properties and more workload. There has to be a breaking point.
Okay, I just want to be clear. So you're saying without this position, then the work that Councilwoman Allen and these folks want to do will not take place?
It may not.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Tiger?
What is the cost of a permit for these folks that want to expand and have their properties included in a conservation overlay?
To expand a district, we used to pay for that out of our budget when we first started, but now we require the property owners to pay those application fees, the mailings, like a planning commission application for a zone change would occur.
And what does that run approximately?
It depends on how many properties are covered and the 500-foot boundary outside those boundaries. Because we're in an urban area and the lots are small, it can be quite expensive, thousands of dollars. Salem Town recently did that twice. They have to pay for 2 mailings, and it was a considerable amount of money. But they do raise that and pay for it themselves.
All right, I may be espousing an unpopular position here with many in this room, but I'm going to raise it anyway. At a time when we're increasing animal control fees for the purpose of adding more enforcement out in the field, i.e. 3 positions, tell me why it's a bad idea if I choose to live in a neighborhood with this protection that I would not be charged a fee, an annual surcharge or something to fund these positions, these administrative positions to oversee this, as opposed to me living in a suburban, newer neighborhood that doesn't have this opportunity. Tell me why that's a bad idea.
Well, I would say, in general, most of the conservation overlays and historic overlays went in areas where the property values were very low, and there have been literally dozens and dozens of studies, one in Memphis, Knoxville, and Chattanooga, that have looked at areas that have it and don't. They're alike in the architecture and the character and the age of structures. And generally, they create an environment where people are willing to invest. And so it attracts investment and property values are raised. So it benefits the city in that way. And it's like almost like a redevelopment district, encourages people to invest, and it raises the bottom line of the taxes we bring in for property taxes. And that is the argument, that is the reason most cities don't charge a fee. Some do, and we did look at that several years ago. The finance department looked at having us charge a fee for new construction and additions and demolitions. And we put that together, and we were open to that. We took that plan before the Historic Zoning Commission, and they approved it at that time. But at that time, because of the recession we were in, the administration chose not to move forward. And so if we wanted to look at that, that's certainly a possibility again.
Could you provide us or get that to Ms. Waller in our office so we could review that?
Absolutely.
And if you have any studies or data, I understand a blighted area now, it has protections, people invest, it revitalizes the neighborhood. You know, before and after property tax values and the difference that's created there to make this worthwhile. If there's any studies on that, I would love to see that personally too.
Be happy to provide those.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilman Tiger. Councilor Evans?
Thank you, Chairman Matthews. I guess I want to start with the Metro Historical Commission, Dr. McKee and Councilman Forcom, because we have 2 commissions. We have somebody here from Historic Zoning, right? So.
Yes, I think we have.
I see Ben back there. I guess I want to just make, I guess, clear or understand more. We had a conversation last night with General Services about the relocation of the Election Commission, their displacement, I think, designed to allow you potentially, or part of you, to move downtown. And I asked a question of Ms. Whittemore, who I think everybody knows I admire greatly, about the people who use Sunnyside for, can you describe, and Dr. McKee, you're a historian, and you know what historians like when they visit towns. What do they, people come through the door? I mean, why, do they just drop in and say, I'm new in town and I want to know what the historic sites are? What's that like, that impromptu public service that you provide?
Thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of all historians everywhere, Council Lady. First of all, I think it's...
I can't think of anybody better.
Well, you're very kind. You're very kind. I think part of the service that we provide is in the tourism piece. It's not just important that we have material at Sunnyside for walk-ins and people who come, but that we provide material at various other locations around town. When tourists come, they can come in Sunnyside. There's parking places right there. They can walk in the door. I think they find us primarily internet. They find our location based that. I don't think we have anybody driving around town just looking for us, kind of thing. But when they walk in, they're greeted very graciously by Yvonne, and they're given a good deal of material. We hope that then encourages them to spend money in our community and visit these different places. And so I think that's part of this whole idea of what do tourists get when they come, besides Tootsie's and the Grand Ole Opry and those kinds of things. And the sesquicentennial of the Civil War, we have a number of Civil War sites here that I think are really being visited far more than they would in a normal year.
Okay. And one of the questions I asked Ms. Whittemore last night is if council were to approve the move to the Metro office building, how do you anticipate the greeting of the public, the tourist, the, welcome to our, historic city? How do you expect that to be programmed there and differentiate it from how it's programmed today?
Well, first of all, I think it gives an impression of the city when the Historical Commission is in a historical site.
That tends to be the case everywhere, doesn't it? I mean, I haven't ever been to a city that didn't have its historical commission in a historic location.
I wish the answer to that were yes. It's probably a mixed bag depending on which city you look at. But I think, first of all, that's an important door for us. Secondly, we have to be easily found.
Okay.
Because these people will not necessarily know. Let's talk specifically about the Fulton campus. Parking several blocks away can be a problem. Walking
especially, I would think, for older visitors, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for people who are not familiar with the community. I think that's one of my concerns. A second concern is space allocation. We're very blessed with space at the Sunnyside House, and we're very blessed, I think, to have an imprint as a front door. As I've looked at the plans for the Fulton campus, what we see is that we're sort of behind planning. So you have to walk through the maps area and the GPS area even to find the Historical Commission. So if you find the building, you find a parking place, then you've got to find inside the building the location of the commission. And that's sort of a concern for us.
Okay. Doesn't sound like it's very tourist-friendly anyway. Okay, my next questions relate to historic zoning. I just want to talk a little bit about the permit process. Ben, do you mind? Okay.
I'll do the best I can.
Well, I live in a historic district, and my husband is a real estate developer, and he's done a few houses there, so I'm kind of familiar with the process. But just for the edification of the council and the public, would you mind describing the permit issuance and how it relates to the construction? What permits Metro Historic issues, how many they issue on an annual basis or a daily basis, or however you want to phrase it, and how that process is differentiated from the actual construction process and that permitting process.
Sure, and I'd rely on Tim and perhaps Yvonne to maybe help fill in the blanks on some specific numbers, but I can say generally, I'll speak generally to how many applications we see that come before the commission. When an applicant who is in either a conservation or a zoning district wants to do something, make an alteration, demolish their house, have an addition, depending on their particular condition or situation, they come down to the Fulton campus and to codes and through the electronic system there. They don't already know, and most of them do, they're kind of alerted to the fact that you are in a historic district, and that generally most of them do, and that they're kind of out in front of that. But if they're not, they would be referred to the staff, and the staff would kind of help them from there. And also, too, it depends, the level of involvement would certainly depend on the scope of the project. If it's a demolition, there would be some investigation as to whether the structure is contributing or non-contributing, and the staff makes that determination. And if it is, I'd say at least half, if not more, the majority of cases are approved at the staff level that come into the codes department, at least at this point. And if that's not the case, then the applicant is going to come before our Historic Zoning Commission, and that's a scheduled meeting, just like the Planning Commission is a scheduled meeting that has deadlines for submission, requirements for drawings for submission, and then they would just be on the docket, and the staff then has time to review that application, and we'll give them, there's tremendous amount of feedback between the applicant and the staff, and they work to try to get the applicant where they need to be in terms of approvals.
Okay. And so it's limited just to design, though, for the most part?
Yes, for the most part. We approve, as a commission, we'll hear on the appropriateness of adding districts and some of those things, but the majority of our work is on a specific property, a specific alteration, demolition, or addition or new construction within a district.
Okay. All right, great. And Tim, how many staff permits do you issue each year?
In 2012, we issued 393 permits.
393?
Yes, and we're on track to go, right now, we've almost done 200 already this year. And as Ben said, about 55% of those are issued by staff. Staff has the authority to issue them, review the work, and the other 45% are required to go to the Historic Zoning Commission for approval.
Okay. And has it been your experience, and I know what my experience has been, but most people come and get their design permit, their historic zoning permit, quite a bit of time before they ever start actual construction.
That is true. Sometimes the work's not done. It's just the first step as they're looking at getting bids and going through that process of hiring a contractor. So sometimes it takes a long time.
Yeah, that's been my experience, which sort of, I think Dr. McKee goes to the question of what benefit the one-stop shop would have on a, for historic zoning. I obviously applaud it for other aspects of construction. Want to touch lastly on the property values question. And Councilman Tiger, I totally support the notion that you've brought forward. I live in a historic district, and during the complete nosedive that properties took across the country and the city in 07, 8, 9, didn't happen in historic districts, which is good and bad depending on whether it's tax season or not. But the amount of money that historic districts have returned to this city in terms of property values has just been tremendous, and I hope someday we can fund a study to actually document that.
That would be wonderful.
Thank you, Councilor Evans. Councilman Holloman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some related questions to what's already been brought up, and I do want to say, following up on what Councilor Evans just said, I think a study like that would be very helpful for us to make the case, because I know my own anecdotal evidence is very similar, that I've seen what preserving historic properties can do to the overall value of a neighborhood. I do have concerns about tying fees or some sort of annual charge to people that live in historic neighborhoods. I don't think as a public policy matter we want to say that it costs more to keep the historic home than to tear it down and build something new. So I hope that we'll look at making the case for why encouraging these districts is the way to go rather than charging people to have these districts. And I wanted to get a little bit more specific, and Tim, I don't know if this is you or maybe Ben, but in the last 5 years, tell us about your staffing versus the number of districts and what that workload has been, a little bit more specifically if you can. And I'd be interested both in the number of staff members you had 5 years ago compared to the number of overall districts, and even better, the number of staff members versus the number of properties that are included in those districts that may be reviewed for projects. Can you tell us that number?
I can estimate. Obviously, counting myself, the director, and the office manager for both commissions, there are a total of 8 of us.
But those dedicated to the review of
historic zoning?
Of historic zoning, yes.
Well, there's a lot of crossover in the office. We all work for both commissions depending on what we're doing, especially if it's a special event like the one we had last night with Preservation Awards. I would have expected all staff to be there. But we have 4 a historic zoning administrator and 3 other employees that primarily they do historic zoning work. Robin Ziegler's historic zoning administrator under me, and she helps supervise those employees. Of the 3, one of those persons handles violations and does inspections out in the field to make sure what the commission has approved is built according to plan. And so we have, again, 4, but I would say it's really 1 full-time person and 3 three-quarter-time people because they're doing other work.
How many more or less staff do you have now than you had 5 years ago?
Well, we have 1 position less. We've lost 2 half positions, I think, in 2007 and 8 or 8 and 9.
Okay. And during that same 5-year period that you lost 1 FTE, how many districts did you add?
Well, since 2007, again, with Salem Town, we've added 9 new districts.
And approximately how many new properties is that?
And expanded 2. And I don't have that number in front of me, but I know it was more than 3,000 properties.
Okay. And so you added 3,000 properties, 9 districts, for a total of what, 22 districts now? Is that right?
Actually, we have 23 or 24. I forget counting Salem Town.
Okay. So would it be fair to say you've had somewhere between a third to 40% increase in the number of properties that are covered by overlays during this 6-year period?
Well, properties have increased by 55%, to be specific.
Okay. While staffing has gone down?
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, that concerns me. I, like Council Lady Allen, have people that want to talk about expanding districts. As I said before, I think that's something that we've demonstrated has been good for the tax base of this city. It's certainly been good for the quality of life in this city as we see some of our older neighborhoods revitalize, and not just in the neighborhood, but in the adjacent corridors. I think as you see folks invest in those residential properties, you see commercial developers choose to come back in the commercial areas adjacent to those areas and invest. So to me, $63,000 to allow us to get back on track with expanding the number of districts in the city and being able to do that workload is a small price for a lot of return on investment. I think there's one legal distinction to follow up on Councilman Stein's question to you that we should talk about, which is unlike maybe at the codes department where if they get backed up, when they get to you, they get to you, and not to suggest that they don't work as fast as they can, but if you don't get your permit for codes, you don't get your permit for codes. But explain a little bit under the law, if you don't approve or disapprove, if you don't act on a permit request within so long, it's automatically granted. Am I right about that?
Yes, it has to be acted on within 15 business days by ordinance.
So if we aren't functionally able to do the work, it's a little bit more problematic, I think, than just saying that there's going to be a delay in response time. It's that we may see historic homes that people worked hard to be included in a district demolished if you're not able to reach it in time, or inappropriate additions that aren't consistent with the neighborhood that happen if you're not able to stay on top of that workload the way that you want to.
Councilman Holland, if I might add to that, specifically in Germantown, but in more in-town neighborhoods, to that end, we're getting larger projects that are more complex. It's not a simple bump on the back of a house. It is infill projects that require considerably more time for the staff and the commission, for that matter, to understand and review. And so that I did want to add that into it, that
that's a factor I had thought about. I mean, that's
projects that are submitted are not necessarily equal in terms of time commitment, and because these neighborhoods, the growth of Nashville in these neighborhoods are so popular, that pressure to provide appropriate development and thus appropriate response from us as a commission and from the staff is certainly not decreasing, it's increasing, and the projects are becoming more complex.
And my sense of it, just anecdotally, is that some of the areas where we might be likely to expand, we've done a lot of the single-family, basic subdivision plat, housing, and we probably would be looking at expanding in some areas like you described in Germantown, where you're going to have some of the more complex infill developments, would be my assumption.
When, and as a function of real estate, as property values increase and as the price of land goes up, then the pressure on that land to produce a return, if it's an investment for somebody or even single-family owners, people that want to move into town, it adds to complexity because there's the notion to try to maximize it and to keep that within the intent of the guidelines is no easy task. And so that as it gets more popular, they get more complex, and folks are trying to do what naturally comes with how real estate works. So.
Thank you. And then I think the last thing that I had beyond being able to be sure that we properly fund your office to continue the preservation work that I think most of in this chamber would agree, since we started this program in the mid-'80s, has been a positive for our city. And if you look at the development of neighborhoods in the urban core, it's just, I think, a factor that's unparalleled to anything else we've done in terms of seeing neighborhoods in the urban core redevelop and advance. But I also want to say that I think it was a positive move when we renovated Sunnyside and moved out there. And I know for years Metro Historic had been sort of itinerant farmers. They had gone from rented space to rented space. I think you're in Cummins Station. You've been in city office space. I think related to the message that historic preservation and neighborhood revitalization is important is the fact that we put you in a space where people know where you are. You're in a space that itself is historic, and so when you walk into that office, it tells you when you come through the door what the mission of the people inside that building is. And I just want to say that I support you in staying at that location. I think we invested more than $500,000 in that building, and that the use we have it for now is ideal. And so I hope that we can have that discussion in this budget process about keeping you there.
Thank you, Councilman Holloman. Councilor Berry.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to all of you for coming. I wanted to just circle back, and Mr. Walker, maybe you can spend a second addressing this issue, and that has to do with the one-stop shop. I think that clearly there's a lot of conversation about the role that the Historical Commission plays in that process. Can you just take a moment, because you and I had a conversation about the fact that you all have participated in something similar in the past and are more than willing to continue to do that, and talk about that for a second.
Yes. I think the one-stop shop first is a great idea. And we actually tried something similar to that 2 years ago. I approached the Codes Director, Terry Cobb, and asked if he might have space available for a staff person to be there on a trial basis. So for 4 months, we staffed a position at Codes. He gave us a desk, a telephone, and a computer. And we wanted to see if that would help make us more efficient. And we did that for 4 months. And what we found is, because, again, we're not reviewing every property in the county, we're just reviewing the properties in the overlay districts, that we just weren't very busy. So people had to bring a lot of busy work. So we wanted to give it a go, and we'd still be happy to put a person in one-stop shop if we're asked to. I've actually said that from the very beginning.
Great. I just wanted to make sure that the folks know that you have been supportive of the one-stop shop, that this has been something that you are absolutely willing to work with Codes to make it more efficient, and that's...
Well, we're continually trying to do that. We meet with Codes on a monthly basis, have for 2 years, because we want to work closely together and help each other out.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Berry. Councilman Claiborne?
Thank you. I don't have a question, but I just want to take this opportunity in a public way to thank you, Tim, for all the support that you've provided for us as we formed the Friends of Two Rivers, the support of the commission. You and some of your staff members were there at the very first meeting we had in February 2010. And you've been there with us at critical times all along, and continue to advise us and be a part of what we're trying to do as we move toward creating a master plan and cataloging the holdings of the house, and doing other things that are necessary to make us a maturing friends group. So I just want to take the opportunity to publicly thank you and the staff and the commission for that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Claiborne. Councilor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. I just want to tell Mr. Walker, I appreciate you very much. You know that I do consider that I have 2 overlay districts now. We did Germantown my first term, and then we did Salem Town. And I mean, the work that you put into it, as well as Robin, was unbelievable. So the support for another one, and I'm not just saying that, you know, I called you offline like, Tim, help me, because they can be very controversial. But what I wanted to say is that I received an email, and I just wanted to read a brief piece of it to talk about the return on investments that overlays have. And it's interesting because this gentleman is a large developer. I won't disclose his name, but he had, I guess, some difficulty with the overlay, but he sent me an email, funny, yesterday that says, my real estate broker who manages all of my sales is entertaining guests from Los Angeles, California this week. These folks are in the boutique business and boutique hotel business and are looking for unique historic structures to maintain and renovate. They are interested in Germantown, Salem Town area. Just wanted to tell you that. So kudos to you. We got a boutique. People looking from Los Angeles want to put a boutique hotel in there because we have overlays. So I appreciate you. I think we need to recognize the importance of preservation. It plays a significant role. And even though our cities are young, if we never preserve anything, we can never be like a London or, you know, our older countries, or Italy if we just push everything down. So I think it is some value to that. And I just wanted to tell you thank you so much publicly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gilmore. Councilman Domine.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm guessing we're down to the end. But anyway, I had a couple questions. One was, there was discussion about adding back a staff person. Could you describe briefly, if we were to add back a half a staff person, because you'd indicated you'd lost 2 half positions, how that would impact your ability to perform the tasks that are required in the event our budget discussions don't come up with enough money to add back a full position? I want to know what that difference might be.
We'd certainly be happy to take whatever you'd be willing to give us. We were hoping to get back to where we were 5 years ago, but we're happy to take that, and we would make that work.
What differences would you be able to see if we didn't have that?
Well, I'm afraid without a full staff person, it's going to be very difficult to continue to stay caught up with the work in historic zoning. As I said, we're on track to exceed permits from last year, and the way the economy is growing, I don't see that ending. People probably don't realize, but during the recession, our workload did not go down. That is where people went back and invested. They added additions to homes. They didn't sell. And so we never saw a slowdown during the recession. It was very steady, and I just think that's going to continue to grow. And it concerns me that we've added all these properties, and we've lost a person at the same time. And here I have 5 council people wanting to expand districts or add a new district, and just getting that half person is, I think we're still going to struggle.
I can understand that, and I'm not opposed to adding a person. I'm just trying to, we don't have the chance to bring you back in and discuss this
Sure.
after today.
I'll add, Commissioner Mosley might, if he were allowed, might want to add something.
This is a little quippy, but it's hard for us to act on half a report, and I think, as I've said, and I think as this discussion is going on, that the amount of development that continues and the complexity of the projects doesn't involve an equivalent amount of time being spent. Not every project is difficult, but certainly projects are becoming more difficult. And so if nothing else, for that reason, as Nashville continues to rise and climb, as in-town interest is certainly not on the decline, that would be an argument just as a commissioner, but also as a resident of an in-town neighborhood for 14 years. That would be what I would add to the conversation.
I appreciate that. And I would love to chat offline about some historical properties, but and add some to your workload. But I just want to make sure we had that discussion before we have our work session.
Thank you, Councilman Dominic. Councilor Evans.
I'm sorry, Council Lady Berry asked a really good question, and it sparked something in my mind, and so that's why I'm coming back for seconds. When you did the one-stop shop a few years ago, did you notice a material increase in your permit approval turnaround time?
No, I mean, to be honest, both codes and our department, and maybe to some extent planning, because so many permits are issued and the discussion takes place via internet, we don't always have that face-to-face consult that you might have had 10 years ago even. Okay. And so it didn't expedite it any, but it certainly lets somebody speak to someone in person.
Okay, so how many of your permits are issued via internet? Or what percentage would you say?
I would say probably half.
Okay, so if we do the one-stop shop, do you anticipate a material increase in your service to the community? Or would you expect your experience to be similar to what it was in the past?
It would probably be similar, but we would certainly, be there.
Okay.
In person.
Well, my only last thing is, Mr. Chairman, this is the council chamber. There's a microphone back there, and there's a vice mayor. And does Vice Mayor George Cate have anything to add to this?
Let me say it's a privilege to serve on the Metropolitan Historical Commission. And the service that's been provided from Sunnyside, I think, has been a real tribute to this community. It's a great location. From a personal standpoint, I'd like to see it continue there. And I can't avoid passing this compliment to the present council members for your diligence and your dedication. I consider it quite a distinct honor to be able to say I was once one of your number. Please consider me as one of the most enthusiastic members of the Alumni Association of the Metro Council.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Councilman Glover.
Just a quick question. Are there any fees associated? If so, is there any way that money can be made up there to maybe fund this other position? Thank you.
Well, again, we could certainly look at the fee structure that was proposed a few years ago. We'd be happy to look at that, and that would certainly bring in some income. We also do Section 106 review to expedite development for MDHA, and we do get up to $20,000 a year as a grant that goes into the general fund that we've never used. Just to note that comes in too, but certainly be happy to look at the fee structure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Glover. Councilor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief comment, that's all. I just want to say I would not support a fee on the residents. I just want to go on record on saying that. I support the overlay and the historical commission, but I noticed several council members have brought up taxing the residents, and I do not. I stand with Councilman Holloman on that, but you have my full support. I just want to be on record for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gilmore. Seeing no other council members in queue, I'd like to thank you all for your service to our city, and your hearing is closed.
Thank you.
Thank you.